Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning. This morning we'll take a look at the beginning of chapter 5 of Canto 8 of Srimad-Bhagavatam. The demigods appeal to the Lord for protection. And we have, we'll be taking a look at verses 1 through 5. 5 has a short purport. And is it our practice here to also take a look at the head note, the chapter summary? Okay. So I'll start with that. Śrīla Prabhupada writes, this chapter describes the 5th and 6th manus, and it also describes the prayers of the demigods and the curse of Durvasa Muni. The brother of Tamasa, the 4th manu, who has previously been described, was the 5th manu, Raivata. The sons of Raivata included Arjuna, Bali, and Vindhya. During the reign of this Manu, Indra, the king of heaven, was known as Vibhu, not Anu. It's a joke. Vibhu, not Anu. The Lord is Vibhu, we're Anu. So it's just an interesting name. I had a godbrother named Vibhu. Among the demigods were the Bhutarayas, and among the 7 rishis were Hiranyaroma, Vedashira, and Urdvabahu. The rishi known as Shubhra, by his wife Vaikuṇṭha, gave birth to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaikuṇṭha. This Supreme Personality of Godhead manifested a Vaikuṇṭha planet at the request of Rama Devi. His power and activities are mentioned in the third canto. The sixth Manu was Chakshusha, the son of Chakshu Manu. Among the sons of the sixth Manu were Puru, Purusha, and Sudyumna. During the reign of this Manu, Mantradruma was Indra, the king of the heavenly planets. Among the demigods were the Apyas, and among the seven rishis were Havishman and Vedaka. The wife of Vairaja, whose name was Devasambhuti, gave birth to Ajita, an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This Ajita, taking the shape of a tortoise and holding the mountain known as Mandara on his back, churned the ocean and produced nectar for the demigods. Therein lies a tale. Maharaj Parikshit was very eager to hear about the churning of the ocean, and therefore Shukadev Goswami began to explain to him how the demigods, having been cursed by Durvasa Muni, were defeated in battle by the Asuras. When the demigods were deprived of their heavenly kingdom, they went to the assembly house of Lord Brahma and informed Lord Brahma of what had happened. Then Brahma, along with all the demigods, went to the shore of the ocean of milk and offered prayers to Kshirodakshayi Vishnu. Okay, so we have text 1 on the board, so we'll do that one together. Pardon? Oh, what are we? What, oh, is that 5 then?
What happened is this is last week.
That's not even 5.
He did chapter 4, text 1.
8/5/23. That's what I'm today.
8/5/23.
Ask me how I know.
How do you know?
How do you know?
I did yesterday. I thought I went to the end of the chapter. That's 8/4/1. 8/4/1 instead of 8/5/1.
Oh.
Well, no, Mukunda, he did that by accident. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Yeah, those with devices. So, well, then why don't I chant 1 through 4 myself, and then those with devices, we can all do 5 together. So text 1, Shri Shuka Uvacha, Rajanuditametate Hare Karma Ghanashanam, Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam Raivatang Tvantaram Shranu. Shukadev Goswami continued, O king, I have described to you the pastime of the Gajendra Mokshana, which is most pious to hear. By hearing of such activities of the Lord, one can be freed from all sinful reactions. Now please listen as I describe Raivata Manu. Text 2. Panchamo Raivato Nama Manustama Sasodara Bali Vindhyadayastasya Sutaharjuna Purvaka. The brother of Tamasa Manu was the 5th Manu named Raivata. His sons were headed by Arjuna, Bali, and Vindhya. Does this sound a little familiar? Seems like we've just heard that. Vipurendra Suragana Rajan Bhutarayadaya Hiranyaroma Vedashira Urdvabhavadayodvija. O king, the millennium of Raivatam, in the millennium of Raivata Manu, the king of heaven was known as Vibhu. Among the demigods were the Bhutarayas, And among the 7 brahmanas who occupied the 7 planets were Hiranyaroma, Vedashita, and Urdhvabhahu. Yeah. Well, this is all kind of setting the scene. Essentially we've got a transition from chapter 4 to chapter 5 here at the beginning. Text 4. Patni Vikunta Shubrasya Vaikuṇṭha Surasattamai Tayo Svakalaya Jagye Vaikuṇṭho Bhagavan Swayam. From the combination of Shubra and his wife, Vikunṭha, there appeared the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaikuṇṭha, along with the demigods who were his personal plenary expansions. And text 5. Do we do word by word first here? Generally? Okay. Vaikuṇṭha kalpito yena Loko loka namaskrita Ramaya prartyamanena Devya tat priyakamyaya Vaikuṇṭha kalpito yena Loko loka namaskrita Ramaya prartyamanena Devya tat priyakamyaya Vaikuṇṭha kalpito yena Loko loka namaskrita Ramaya prartyamanena Devya tat priyakamyaya. Others, please. Anybody? Any interweb audience? Okay. Word to word. Vaikuṇṭha, a Vaikuṇṭha planet. Kalpita, was constructed. Yena, by whom. Loka, planet. Loka namaskrita, worshipped by all people. Ramaya, by Rama, the goddess of fortune. Partyamanena, being so requested. Devya, by the goddess. Tat her priyakamyaya, just to please. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Just to please the Goddess of Fortune, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaikuṇṭha, at her request, created another Vaikuṇṭha planet which is worshipped by everyone. Responsively, please. Just to please the Goddess of Fortune, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaikuṇṭha, at her request, created another Vaikuṇṭha planet, which is worshipped by everyone. Śrīla Prabhupada's purport. Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura remarks here that this Vaikuṇṭha planet, like Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, appears and is said to be born or created, but both Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and Vaikuṇṭha eternally exist beyond the material universes, which are enveloped by 8 kinds of coverings. As described in the 2nd canto, Lord Brahma saw Vaikuṇṭha before the creation of the universe. Viragavacharya mentions that this Vaikuṇṭha is within the universe. It is situated above the mountain known as Loka. This planet is worshipped by everyone. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukhaṁ Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkrapatamahang Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Vaikuṇṭha kalpito yena loko lokanamaskruta Ramaya prartimanena devya tatpriyakamyaya. Just to please the Goddess of Fortune, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaikuṇṭha, at her request, created another Vaikuṇṭha planet, which is worshipped by everyone. So as Śrīla Prabhupada points out in his purport, we talk about Vaikuṇṭha creating this Vaikuṇṭha planet, just as we talk about the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam having, I don't know, been, how does Śrīla Prabhupada puts it here, being created. And we have like a wonderful story about how it is the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam appeared, those verses in those chapters in the 1st canto. I love that 5th chapter where Śrīla Vyasadeva is depressed. He's disconcerted because after having done all the work of compiling all the different Vedic literatures, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Samhitas, simply for the benefit of all humankind, he still feels like something's missing. And so he's sitting there kind of bummed out, and his guru, Narada Muni, appears and straightens him out in no uncertain terms, referring to any literature that doesn't directly glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his devotees, and devotional service is what? A garbage heap. It's not just, we're when he says it's a place of pilgrimage for, any other literature is place of pilgrimage for crows, he's not talking about the Harlequin romances, or the cheesy science fiction novels at the used bookstore or whatever. He's not just talking about that. He's talking about, all that work that Śrīla Vyasadeva has engaged in. So he squares him away. So just as even Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita refers to his appearance and his lila as janma and karma, janma karma cha me divyam evam yoviti tattvata. So if someone actually understands the transcendental nature, Srila Prabhupada gives us as his appearance and activities. But, people are going to easily misread that as my birth and my work. Krishna doesn't work. Krishna plays, right? Vishnu works. Different Vishnus have work to do. Krishna, he's just a goofball. He likes to horse around. Has nothing to do. There's that wonderful story about some devotee, European devotee, who went to India, and he was looking at all the murtis of all the different devatas and even the different forms of Bhagavan in different temples, and they all had some work to do. They all had these instruments and everything. But when he saw the form of Krishna just hanging out playing on a flute, like some folks we might know, he thought, oh, this has to be the Supreme Personality of God, because he doesn't have anything to do. He just gets to horse around all day. So we talk about that as, some kind of creation. We talk about the creation of this Vaikuṇṭha planet. And Viśvanātha Cakravartī says, just as the Lord's appearance is called a birth, so the appearance of the Lord's planet is called creating a planet. But it's not a material creation. He talks about how this is described in the Kramasandarbha. This Vaikuṇṭha planet of the son of Vaikuṇṭha is the same as the original Vaikuṇṭha planet beyond the covering of the universe, seen by Brahma before he created the living entities, as described in the second canto. So we can see directly where Srila Prabhupada draws his purport from. And I thought, when I read the verses in the purport, I thought, what do I know about this stuff? This is all adhokshaja. It's all beyond the ken of the mind and senses. And I'm just a kind of goofy, neurotic kid from Lompoc, California. What do I have to say about this stuff? And I thought, well, Srila Prabhupada and Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura have given me a perfect excuse to take us back to the ninth chapter of the second canto. So I just want to go through some of those verses. Of course, we know this brings us ultimately to the Chatushloki, but we're not going to go that far today, because what we're talking about, what Srila Prabhupada and Srila Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura are talking about is even before the creation of this. So this is obviously adhokshaja. This is obviously beyond material perception and understanding, because it existed before there was even time, right? Before the creation of the material universe. So I just kind of want to go through these verses, and I'll make a couple of stops with quick excerpts from a couple of the purports along the way. So I'll start with verse 1 because it's chapter 9, Canto 2, chapter 9. Answers by citing the Lord's version. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O king, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no meaning to the relationship of the soul in pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer's seeing his own body working. Now we know about dreams. The other night, I generally don't have any memory of any dreams, and I have this like sleep tracker on my phone because I I'm all appled up. I eventually got talked into buying even an Apple Watch to keep track of my health because I'm, getting close to 30. And if you buy that, I have a bridge I can sell you too. But the other night, I actually had two dreams that I had some memory of. One was, frankly, a nightmare. And I don't remember a lot of details, but I do remember that it seemed like it was going to go on. It was like one of the sort of end of the world, kind of felt like the end of the world. Pardon? No, you don't even have to be a temple president to have these dreams. You can be a bum like me and still have such dreams. Sometimes these dreams will happen to me when I take a nap, and I wake up with this sense of being lost and alone. This one was just, the things that I kind of can remember were just horrible. Some things I would never share with anyone. But then at the end, and I was looking at my sleep tracker, and there was a REM thing right at the end of my sleep, just before I woke up. And it was some kind of really sweet dream about having interactions with some really sincere devotees, and we were, I guess, sharing realizations or something like that. At least that was the impression I took away from it. And I just thought, when I woke up from the other one in the middle of the night, and I see this long REM sleep thing on the graph on my app, so it did seem to go on practically forever. There's that period when you're thinking, oh my God, and then you realize, oh, that was a dream, and then you're awake and you hope you'll be able to fall back asleep. Well, but there's also a little trepidation about falling back asleep, because there have been instances where I've fallen back to sleep and the dream resumes, which is just really weird. So what is our real relationship with those things that go on in those dreams? There's something going on in our mind that's being processed in that part of our sleep. But it's not even ephemeral. It's not even subtle. It's just kind of like a flash, a thought. So, without the touch of bhakti, what kind of relationship do we really have with our body? There isn't a real relationship. And this, Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura mentions that this this and the four basic verses that show up here, this particular verse kind of answers the question about whether the jiva's relationship with the body is with or without cause. And in his purport, Srila Prabhupada says, origin of the jiva fans, please take note. There's no necessity of tracing out the history of when the living entity desired to have some existence separate from its source. So anyway, moving on. Text 2. The illusion living entity appears in so many forms offered by the external energy of the Lord. While enjoying in the modes of material nature, the encaged living entity misconceives, thinking in terms of I and mine, mamaham. These are our two big problems here in the real world, right? These are our anchors or hooks to this material world, this sense of ahanta and mamata, the sense of identity of I-ness and my-ness. And there's a cure for that, which is our real I-ness and my-ness. I am Krishna's and Krishna is mine. So that's the original ahanta and mamata. As soon as the living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory, and I am Krishna's and Krishna is mine, and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, he at once gives up the two misconceptions of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as the pure self. Oops. O king, The personality of Godhead, being very much pleased with Lord Brahma because of his non-deceptive penance in Bhakti Yoga, presented his eternal and transcendental form before Lord Brahma. And that is the objective goal for purifying the conditioned soul. Lord Brahma, the first spiritual master, supreme in the universe, could not trace out the source of his lotus seat. And while thinking of creating the material world, he could not understand the proper direction for such creative work, nor could he find out the process for such creation. While thus engaged in thinking in the water, Brahmaji heard twice from nearby 2 syllables joined together. One of the syllables was taken from the 16th and the other from the 21st of the Sparsha alphabets, and both joined to become the wealth of the renounced order of life. Japa. Interesting word. It means heat, warmth. It means austerity. It means penances. It also means spiritual observance, which is different for different kinds of people. Studying sacred scriptures for the Brahmanas, etc. Different things for the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. And this is the wealth of the Brahmanas. Vishwanath Chakravartī Ṭhākura says, this is called wealth because the Brahmanas are called a wealth of austerity. The wealth of Brahmanas, the wealth of the renounced order of life, is that penance, that endeavor for spiritual realization. When he heard the sound, he tried to find the speaker, searching on all sides. But when he was unable to find anyone besides himself, he thought it wise to sit down on his lotus seat firmly and give his attention to the execution of penance as he was instructed. Tapa also means meditation. So going within, introspection. You'll find the answers within. Shikadev continues, Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculations of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibration from the sky and he accepted it as divine. Thus he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. The personality of Godhead, being very much satisfied with the penance of Lord Brahma, was pleased to manifest his personal abode, Vaikuṇṭha, the supreme planet above all others. So the material universe had not yet been created. And the Lord gave Brahma a vision of Vaikuṇṭha, which is eternally existing. This transcendental abode of the Lord is adored by all self-realized persons freed from all kinds of miseries and fear of illusory existence. I have a number of notes in that purport. In that personal abode of the Lord, the material modes of ignorance and passion do not prevail, nor is there any of their influence in goodness. There's no predominance of the influence of time, what to speak of the illusory external energy. It cannot enter that region. Nota bene. Please note well. There is in Vaikuṇṭha, in the Vaikuṇṭha planets, from whatever Vaikuṇṭha planet you want to start with to Goloka, all the way to Goloka, there is no influence of the illusory energy. It cannot enter that region. Therefore, once you're there, however you're there, there's no returning, as Krishna notes 3 times in Bhagavad Gita. The inhabitants of the Vaikuṇṭha planets are described as having a glowing sky bluish complexion. Their eyes resemble lotus flowers. Their dress is of yellowish color, and their bodily features very attractive. They're just the age of growing youths, and they all have 4 hands. They're all nicely decorated with pearl necklaces with ornamental medallions, and they all appear to be effulgence. This is a kind of reminder of the different goals of different varieties of practice of bhakti. So you take a look at the Sri Vaishnavas, in which Sampradaya Ramanujacharya appeared, which descends from Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. Their practice is Sharanapati and Vaidhi Bhakti. And we see, described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that what distinguishes Vaidhi Bhakti from Raga-Anuga Bhakti are two things: the motivation and the goal. And the motivation for Vaidhi Bhakti is faith in the instructions of the Shastra and the Guru. And the goal is Vaikuṇṭha Prema. The Sri Vaishnavas call that moksha. And it sounds like a bit of a downgrade, but if we look at it, that's exactly what it is. It's not Sayuja Mukti, but it's the other kinds of moksha. So we have Salokya, Samipya Sarshti. They have a similar Sarupya, similar form to the Lord's. They have wealth similar to the Lord's. They live in the same place as the Lord. They call this moksha, but it's actually a kind of prema. Prema influenced by the Aishvarya of Goloka, whereas the motivation for Raga-Anuga Bhakti is an intense desire to serve the Lord, following the example of one of his eternal associates in Vrindavan, completely free from any Aishvarya, completely free from any sense of the Lord's godness. He's one of us, right? Aho bhagyam, aho bhagyam. Lord Brahma exclaims in Brahmastuti, Nanda Gopur Vajaukasam, young mitram paramananda. So how fortunate are all the residents of Vrindavan, because the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of everything, the Supreme Controller, lives among them just like one of them. Yan mitra parama, living among them just like a friend. Okay, keep moving. Some of them are effulgent like coral and diamonds in complexion and have garlands on their heads, blooming like lotus flowers, and some wear earrings. So there's some variety even there. The Vaikuṇṭha planets are also surrounded by various airplanes, all glowing and brilliantly situated. They don't emit those nasty fumes that we have to experience at the airport, at least until that thing gets up in the air and starts moving and we leave the fumes behind for everyone else to enjoy. These airplanes belong to the great Mahatmas, or the devotees of the Lord. The ladies are as beautiful as lightning because of their celestial complexions, and all these combined together appear just like the sky decorated with both clouds and lightning. The goddess of fortune in her transcendental form is engaged in the loving service of the Lord's lotus feet, and being moved by the black bees, followers of spring, she is not only engaged in variegated pleasure, service to the Lord along with her constant companions, but is also engaged in singing the glories of the Lord's activities. Lord Brahma saw in the Vaikuṇṭha planets the personality of Godhead, who's the Lord of the entire devotee community, the Lord of the goddess of fortune, the Lord of all sacrifices, and the Lord of the universe, who is served by the foremost servitors like Nanda, Sunanda, Prabala, and Arhana, his immediate associates. Personality of Godhead seen leaning favorably toward his loving servitors, his very sight intoxicating and attractive, appears to be very much satisfied. He had a smiling face decorated with an enchanting reddish hue. He was dressed in yellow robes and wore earrings and a helmet on his head. He had 4 hands, and his chest was marked with the lines of the goddess of fortune. The Lord was seated on his throne, surrounded by different energies like the 4, the 16, the 5, and the 6 natural opulences, along with other insignificant energies of the temporary character. But he was factual. He was the factual Supreme Lord, enjoying in his own abode. Lord Brahma, thus seeing the personality of Godhead in his fullness, was overwhelmed with joy within his heart. And thus, in full transcendental love and ecstasy, his eyes filled with tears of love, he bowed down before the Lord. That is the way of the highest perfection for the living beings, the Paramahamsas. Maybe one more. Yes. And I'll end with this one. After seeing Lord Brahma present before him, the Lord accepted him as worthy to create living beings, to be controlled as he desired. He, capital H, the Lord desired. And thus being very much satisfied with him, the Lord shook hands with Brahma and slightly smiling addressed him thus. So we see this is something that's beyond our conception. These are eternal places. We talk about them as planets as if they were kind of a geographical location. But these things are all kind of different planes of loving consciousness. And you know, kind of they're presented as places, as lokas, just so that we can kind of wrap some little part of our little minds around them. As Srila Prabhupada points out, we don't even understand how our hair and fingernails are growing generally. You know, we know that it happens, and we know that the day before Ekadashi, we start to become very much aware of how long our fingernails are. This is at least my experience. And you know, if I haven't cut my fingernails for a week, I realize, oh my God, tomorrow's Ekadashi. I've got to make 5 minutes today to cut my nails. Otherwise, tomorrow I'm going to be thinking about my fingernails instead of Krishna. So we don't even understand those things. So how we can understand what really is beyond our perception and conception, you know, how, you know, that's just something. And I really like this. The Lord shook hands with Brahma. And then a few verses later, that when Brahma begins to set up his questions, he's reflecting that you've shook hands with me just like a friend. So you must be somewhat satisfied with me. So I'm going to try to get everything straight here so that I understand how everything is put together. Okay, so I'll stop there. I'm already over time. Questions, comments, any discussion? Because there is a part of this 5th verse that I have neglected because of my ignorance and my lack of time for really researching it. Dharma Setu Prabhu?
Well, I have a question. Lord Brahma's vision of Vaikuṇṭha, which is described here, and Lord Brahma's vision of Goloka Vrindavan and the Brahma Samhita, is that the same Lord Brahma having 2 different visions or different creations?
Good question. Any of our pundits have discussion? There's another question that's likely to come up that I was leaving for discussion rather than answers. But that's also described to some extent in the Gopal Tapani Upanishad as well, right? Lord Brahma receiving initiation. Srila Prabhupada in the purports, I think maybe it's a little later, describes how Brahma was initiated, you know, by the mantra received from the Lord, and generally we conceive of that as being the 18-syllable Krishna mantra, as Srila Prabhupada describes it, which is the same as the Gopal mantra, which is discussed in the Gopal Tapani Upanishad. So it may be part of this same thing, but what's appropriate here is the vision of the Vaikuṇṭha planets, and it's discussed perhaps in further detail in the Brahma Samhita and the Gopal Tapani. Anybody have anything to add to that?
It was interesting that Vaikuṇṭha is not only the name of a planet, but the name of the Lord.
Yeah. Therefore, our friend who's eagerly awaiting me to come back and spell him on some of the duties he's taken up from me, Vaikuṇṭha Das, That's actually, he's the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as well as the Lord's own abode, which is non-different from him after all. Anything else, Chad?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the ecstasizing lecture. My question is, if someone asked you, what is the goal or goals of Krishna consciousness, how would you respond?
Good question. Srila Prabhupada actually cast a very wide net. And we see that he generally talked about our process as Vaidhi Bhakti, because I think particularly because of his audience. And when we look at that second chapter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it's sometimes a little fuzzy in those sections of the Nectar of Devotion, the distinction between Raganuga Bhakti and Vaidhi Bhakti and Ragatmika Bhakti, which is part of that same discussion. Perhaps because of mistranscription and the immature understanding of the devotees who were doing the editing at the time as well. So it comes out a little fuzzy. But now we have access, and we're going to have access to, I think, sometime soon, to yet another translation of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We have Bhanu Swamis. We've had Bhanu Swamis for some years, 15 years or so. And Bhanu Swami's work was done very rapidly. Apparently his idea was, we have to make this stuff available. And he had apparently he had a lean staff. And does anyone know how many books are in Bhanu Swami's catalog of translations? I counted it up when I was in Mayapur a couple of years ago. I think it was 106. They say over 160. I think it's 168 titles in his catalog. Just amazing. And there are typos and some other problems with the editing because things were done very quickly. And I'm assuming that the BBT edition of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and perhaps I think the Sandarbhas are also coming, that they're being done with more care, which is frankly one reason why a lot of devotees are publishing these books themselves, because they know that things move very slowly through the BBT. I mean, first of all, you have the approval process from, you've got multi-layered, do I want to call it bureaucracy? I don't know. That's too loaded a term. Organization, let's say, and very cautious, moving very cautiously in Bhanu Swami's. Let's just get this stuff out there so devotees can benefit. And I remember that back then, probably, was it 2004, 2005, something like that, when I was living on the Big Island, I had begun a bi-weekly Nectar of Devotion / Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu study group. And one of my friends had sent me a copy of David Haberman's, what's his name, Prem Das? His translation of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu with occasional comments from Jiva Goswami and Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. And then, in one of those internet forums that we had before Facebook, some devotee, I guess an Indian devotee who lives in New Jersey, mentioned that he was coming back to New Jersey from Chennai, I think it was still Madras at that time, with some cases of Bhanu Swami's translation of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Let me know if you want a set. And as I immediately wrote him and said, please set one aside for me, because this is what I'm doing. I explained to him what I was doing. And this devotee very kindly wrote me back immediately saying, I'm just going to send you one as soon as I get back. If you ever run into Bhanu Swami, please give him $25. And I did that 2 years ago. I caught him after one of his presentations at the ILS, and I had a wad of rupees, and I explained that to him, and he was very happy to finally receive his compensation for that copy. And it was just so invaluable to have that, have those as resources. Both Habermans. Haberman is an academic whose spiritual life is connected with the Pushti Marg. His own spiritual practices following Vallabhacharya. But his area of academic expertise, interestingly, is Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And he's written several books about Gaudiya Vaishnavism and Raganuga Bhakti. And I think his spiritual name is Prem Das. I haven't met him, but I know devotees who have, and he seems like a really nice person. So when we read that, these things get kind of straightened out, but there is a gray area because, the motivation for Raganuga Bhakti is this intense greed for following, serving Krishna, following in the wake of one of his eternal residents of Vrindavan. But what if that's actually our goal, but we don't yet have that greed? We know that's what we want. I mean, after all, Srila Prabhupada gave us the nectar of devotion. He was working on that in the late 60s, 68, 69, and it came out in June of 1970. I remember when it came out. It was like, of course, we only had 4 books by that. At that time, we had the abridged edition of the Macmillan Bhagavad Gita as it is. We had Ishopanishad, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and Ishopanishad. So we just had those 4 books from Srila Prabhupada at the time. So a 5th book, that was like a huge deal. And this, just a couple of months later, in maybe late August, early September, late summer of 1970, the first volume of the Krishna book was released. And that makes it very, very, very clear what the goal of life is, what our real goal of life is. Because it's those first 30-some-odd chapters, 40 chapters of the 10th canto, and it's Krishna's Vraja Leela. And that, I mean, even the oldest among us had been practicing for maybe 4 years. And the longest disciples of Srila Prabhupada had been practicing for maybe 4 years, and we just didn't really have a lot of information. Srila Prabhupada gave a lot of information in those Chaitanya Charitamrita lectures he gave in 1966 in New York City. Watch those, you listen to those lectures or read the transcripts. It's like mind-blowing stuff. And then after a little while, you realize then the post that he started pounding was, "You're not this body." But you read some of those lectures, and it's just like, it's stuff that just like, whoa. Prabhupada didn't talk about that a lot, a few years later. He made it clear that we should understand those things, but he kept pounding this because he saw who we were, got to know us better. So Srila Jiva Goswami, I think in Bhakti Sandarbha, makes room for that. And he says that for those who have that aspiration, but they don't yet have that greed, we can call their practice Ajata Ruchi Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And we need to keep clear that there isn't a distinction between Sadhana Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. There's a distinction between Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti is Sadhana Bhakti. And Srila Rupa Goswami makes that clear toward the end of the 2nd chapter. He presents those 64 angas of bhakti as angas of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And then he says, and then we have Raganuga Bhakti, and he talks about that. And he said, actually, the external practice of the Raganuga sadhakas is very similar to that of the Vaidhi sadhakas. There are a few things they neglect. Doing fancy mudras, when they do archana. Actually, I heard yesterday there are 5 things, and it included achaman. And I think it was from one of Vaisheshika's disciples. Although you see in the temple, whenever there's something going on, Vaisheshika Prabhu is very careful to do achaman before, and to give everybody achaman, at least cleanse their hands. And he'll do the three mantra Achman before he begins, and then he'll cleanse everyone's hands. We had 2 grain ceremonies last Saturday morning. And so Achman, worshiping Rukmini and the wives of Dwarka, things that are just not compatible with that, frankly, lawless love of Vrindavan, that complete abandonment, embracing Krishna as just one of us. So our goal, generally, we have this kind of generic term, Vaikuṇṭha, but if we look at Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we see that the Vaikuṇṭha planets, includes those Vaikuṇṭha planets with the 24 different forms of Narayana, and then there's, Ayodhya and Mathura and Dwarka and Goloka, and then at the heart of Goloka, you've got, Krishna's Navadvip Leela, his Gaur Leela as well. You see that on the cover of Srila Prabhupada's Delhi printings of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he designed that cover. So at the center of that, you see some kirtan going on, at the center of the whorl of Goloka. As Srila Prabhupada told us, I had a private meeting, one of my friends and my former wife and I, back in 1973, had a private meeting with Srila Prabhupada, and at one point he said, devotees in devotional service cannot be stereotyped. So it's not a cookie-cutter kind of a thing. And even in Goloka, especially in Goloka, the variety is unimaginable. Everyone has a different love for Krishna from everyone else's, and it's all good. Unity in diversity. So, love is all you need. That's our goal, love. Anything else? I think the clock has run out and the hook is about to come. Thank you all so much. I've been asked if I was going to be here for Gaur Purnima. The answer is I've been here the last 2 years, and I have responsibilities in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I think this year I have to be a grown-up. Plus, I don't want Vaikuṇṭha to be absolutely broken by the time I get back. I may have fun here and in Laguna and Long Beach, and in the meantime, Vaikuṇṭha is back there, along with Sundarananda, kind of making everything happen just by themselves. And they have so much service, so I have to go back and pick up some of my services. So I'm leaving first thing tomorrow morning. And I thank you all for your company, for the opportunity, and see you next time. Grantaraja Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Pancha Kalpataru Vyashtakupasa.